They said the Persians could never fall. For 4 centuries, their empire ruled with iron and flame, unstoppable, untouchable. But then came a wind from the desert, a small force, ragged in armor but blazing with faith. How did a scattered band of believers, outnumbered 5 to 1, bring one of history's greatest empires to its knees? Was it sheer luck, or something far more divine? One man, Nu'man ibn Muqarrin, marched not for glory, but for a cause that reached beyond this world. And when he fell, they rose, with swords, with strategy, and with a prayer on their lips. This isn't just a battle. It's the death of an empire and the birth of a new world. But here's the question no one dares to ask. What if the true victory wasn't on the battlefield, but in the hearts that refused to break? Stay with me. This is the story of Nahawand, the conquest of conquests. The year was 642 CE. The world stood on the brink of a historic transformation, and the stage was set in the rugged lands of Persia. This was not just another battle. It was the final reckoning between 2 civilizations, one ancient, proud, and entrenched in its traditions, the other young, zealous, and driven by divine purpose. The Battle of Nahawand would mark the end of an empire and the rise of a new order under the banner of Islam. To understand the significance of this conflict, we must first look at the events that led up to it. The Sassanian Empire, once a mighty force stretching across vast territories, had already suffered a crushing defeat at the Battle of Qadisiyah in 636 CE. That victory had opened the gates of Mesopotamia to the Muslims, and the fall of Ctesiphon, the Persian capital, soon followed. But even in defeat, the Sassanians did not surrender. They regrouped, rallying their forces for one last stand, a desperate attempt to reclaim their lost glory. At the heart of this struggle was Yazdegerd III, the last Shahanshah of the Sassanian Empire. He was a ruler in exile, moving from city to city as the tide of war turned against him. His people, though weary, still clung to hope. In his eyes, the Arab invaders were nothing more than a passing storm, fierce but fleeting. He believed that if the Persians could unite their strength, they could push back the Muslim advance and restore their empire's honor. Meanwhile, in Medina, Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab received reports from his commanders about the growing threat. Akhnaf ibn Qais, one of the leading Muslim generals, warned him that the Persian forces were consolidating under a single command. "O commander of the faithful," he said, "the enemy is gathering strength. If we do not act decisively, they will strike again." Umar, ever the strategist, understood the gravity of the situation. He knew that a decisive victory was needed to bring an end to the Persian resistance once and for all. So he summoned Nu'man ibn Muqarrin, a seasoned commander who had proven himself in previous battles. Under his leadership, a force of around 30,000 men was assembled, drawn from the garrisons of Kufa, Basra, and other recently conquered regions. These were warriors who had tasted both hardship and triumph, united by faith and the promise of divine reward. The stage was set. On one side stood the remnants of a once great empire, determined to hold on to power. On the other, a rapidly expanding Islamic state, driven by conviction and the belief that they were fulfilling a divine mission. The battlefield of Nahawand would be where these two worlds collided. But before we delve into the details of the battle itself, let us pause and reflect. What does history teach us about resilience and determination? How do empires rise and fall? And what role does faith play in shaping the course of human events? As the winter of 641 gave way to spring in 642, the air in Persia grew heavy with anticipation. Across the land, messengers rode swiftly between cities, carrying orders from Yazdegerd III to his generals. The call to arms echoed through the valleys and plains, summoning soldiers from every corner of the empire. From Media to Khorasan, From Azerbaijan to Sistan, men gathered under the banners of their lords, each bringing their own weapons, armor, and sense of duty. Perez Khosrau, the appointed supreme commander, took charge of this massive mobilization. With over 150,000 troops under his command, he fortified the strategic town of Nahawand, a stronghold perched on high ground, surrounded by natural barriers that made it difficult to attack. The walls of the fortress were reinforced, supply lines secured, and morale carefully managed. The Persians believed they had chosen the perfect place to make their final stand. In contrast, the Muslim forces moved with calculated precision. Nu'man ibn Muqarrin, following the directives of Umar, coordinated the movement of his army from various fronts. His strategy was clear: avoid direct confrontation with the entrenched enemy and instead lure them out into open terrain where mobility and tactics could be fully exploited. He divided his forces into several units, each assigned specific roles, some to engage the enemy, others to flank and surround. As the two armies approached each other, tension mounted. The Persians, confident in their numbers and position, prepared for what they believed would be a decisive victory. The Muslims, though outnumbered, carried the unshakable belief that they were fighting for a cause greater than themselves. Their faith in Allah and the promise of eternal reward fueled their resolve. Let us ask ourselves, how does preparation and unity determine the outcome of conflicts? What lessons can we draw from the meticulous planning of both sides? And how does trust in divine guidance shape the mindset of those who fight for a higher purpose? The morning sun rose over the horizon, casting long shadows across the battlefield. The Muslim army, clad in simple yet sturdy armor, lined up in disciplined formations. Nu'man ibn Muqarrin rode at the front, his presence a source of inspiration to his men. He addressed them with a message that resonated deeply. O servants of Allah, you are the best nation brought forth for mankind, enjoining what is right and forbidding what is wrong, and believing in Allah. Remember the words of your prophet. Whoever fights so that the word of Allah becomes supreme, then he is truly striving in the path of Allah. With those words echoing in their hearts, the Muslims advanced toward the Persian stronghold. Perez Khosrau, watching from atop the fortress walls, saw the small but determined force approaching. He scoffed at their audacity. "These Arabs think they can take Nahawand?" he muttered. "They have no idea what awaits them." Nu'man, however, had no intention of launching a frontal assault. Instead, he executed a brilliant tactical maneuver. He ordered a portion of his army to feign retreat, creating the illusion of fear and disorder. The Persians, seeing this, fell into the trap. Thinking the Muslims were retreating in panic, they surged forward, abandoning their defensive positions to pursue what they believed was an easy victory. But as soon as the Persians broke formation, Nu'man signaled the hidden reserves to strike. From the flanks and rear, the Muslim cavalry charged with full force, cutting off the advancing Persian troops and surrounding them. Chaos erupted. The once confident Persian soldiers found themselves caught in a deadly pincer movement, unable to regroup or retreat. Amidst the chaos, Nu'man fought valiantly, leading from the front. But tragedy struck. He was grievously wounded and fell from his horse. As he lay dying, he called out to his brother, Hudayfa ibn Yaman, who was nearby. "Take command," he whispered. "Continue the fight. Victory is near." Hudayfa, despite his grief, took up the mantle without hesitation. He rallied the troops and pressed the advantage, exploiting the disarray among the Persians. The tide of battle had turned. Reflect with me. What does it mean to lead with courage in the face of adversity? How does sacrifice inspire others to persevere? And what role does divine timing play in the unfolding of great historical events? The battlefield was now a scene of utter devastation. The once proud Persian army, which had entered the fray with such confidence, was unraveling before the relentless onslaught of the Muslim forces. Trapped in a deadly encirclement, many Persian soldiers began to panic. Some tried to flee, while others fought desperately to break free from the tightening grip of their enemies. Hudayfa ibn Yaman, now in full command, seized the momentum. He directed his forces with precision, ensuring that every unit worked in coordination. The Muslim cavalry, swift and agile, cut down fleeing soldiers, while the infantry maintained tight formations, preventing any chance of reorganization among the Persians. Feroz Khosrau, realizing that the battle was lost, attempted to rally his remaining troops. But his voice was drowned out by the cries of the wounded and the clamor of clashing swords. One by one, the Persian commanders fell, their banners trampled beneath the feet of the advancing Muslims. The cohesion that had held the army together moments ago was now shattered beyond repair. By midday, the Persian line had completely collapsed. Thousands of soldiers lay dead or wounded, while the survivors scattered in all directions, some seeking refuge in the mountains, others simply disappearing into the wilderness. The fortress of Nahawand, once thought to be impregnable, was left defenseless. By nightfall, it was in Muslim hands. The victory was complete. Back in Medina, news of the triumph spread quickly. Umar ibn Khattab, upon hearing the report, prostrated in gratitude. "Allahu Akbar," he exclaimed. "This is indeed the Fath al-Futu, the conquest of conquests." But the story did not end here. The fall of Nahawand marked the beginning of the end for the Sassanian Empire. Without a centralized military force to resist, the remaining Persian cities surrendered one by one. Yazdegerd III, the last Shah of Persia, fled eastward, eventually meeting his fate in a remote village years later. Let us ponder, what happens when arrogance blinds a leader to reality? How does the loss of unity lead to downfall? And what lessons can we learn from the rapid collapse of a once mighty empire? With the dust of battle settling, the true magnitude of the victory at Nahawand became apparent. The Persian Empire, which had stood for centuries as a dominant power in the region, was now effectively finished. Its administrative structure crumbled, its military disbanded, and its royal family scattered. Yazdegerd III, the last emperor, continued his flight eastward, hoping to find allies among the rulers of Central Asia. But time was against him. The momentum of the Islamic conquests was unstoppable. In the months that followed, city after city in Persia submitted to the rule of the Caliphate. Isfahan, Ray, Hamadan, all these once great centers of Persian civilization, opened their gates peacefully. The people, weary of war and witnessing the justice and fairness of the Muslim administration, embraced the new order. Unlike the harsh taxation and rigid caste system of the Sassanians, the Muslims offered protection, security, and religious tolerance to those who accepted their rule. Islam spread rapidly, not by force, but through the example of its followers. The moral conduct of the Muslim leaders, their humility, and their commitment to justice won the hearts of many. Scholars, poets, and artisans from Persia soon found a place within the burgeoning Islamic civilization, contributing to its intellectual and cultural development. It was during this period that the seeds of the Islamic Golden Age were sown. Persian scholars like al-Farabi and Ibn Sina, Avicenna, would go on to shape the fields of philosophy, medicine, and science. The fusion of Arab and Persian cultures created a rich tapestry that would influence the world for centuries. Yet, amidst all this progress, we must ask, what happens to a civilization when its foundations are shaken? How does a people adapt to new realities? And what role does faith play in guiding societies through times of transition? The Battle of Nahawand teaches us many things, not just about warfare, but about leadership, perseverance, and the unseen hand of destiny. It reminds us that numbers alone do not determine victory. Rather, it is the strength of purpose, unity of vision, and trust in Allah that tip the scales. Nu'man ibn Muqarrin's sacrifice was not in vain. His death galvanized his men, proving that even in loss there can be profound gain. His successor, Hudayfa ibn Yaman, exemplified the qualities of a true leader: resilience, adaptability, and unwavering faith. Together, they demonstrated that leadership is not defined by titles, but by actions in the most critical moments. Strategically, the use of deception and psychological warfare played a pivotal role in the Muslim victory. Nu'man's decision to feign retreat was not merely a tactic, it was a masterstroke that exposed the weaknesses of the enemy and capitalized on their overconfidence. This serves as a reminder that wisdom and foresight often outweigh brute strength. Spiritually, the battle underscores the Quranic verse, "Indeed, Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change what is in themselves." Surah Ar-Ra'd 13:11. The Muslims changed themselves. They purified their intentions, strengthened their unity, and placed their trust in Allah. And in return, victory was granted. But let us also consider, what does it mean to prepare for challenges with both strategy and faith? How can we apply the lessons of Nahawand in our personal lives? And what responsibilities do we carry as individuals and communities in shaping our destinies? The legacy of the Battle of Nahawand extends far beyond the battlefield. It marks the beginning of a new era, not just for Persia, but for the entire world. The fall of the Sassanian Empire and the rise of Islamic rule paved the way for a civilization that would become a beacon of knowledge, culture, and spiritual enlightenment. The integration of Persian intellect into the Islamic world enriched the sciences, literature, and governance systems of the Caliphate. Persian scholars preserved and expanded upon Greek and Roman knowledge, translating works of Aristotle, Plato, and Hippocrates into Arabic. This intellectual synthesis laid the groundwork for advancements in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy. Moreover, the peaceful conversion of the Persian population to Islam demonstrated the power of example and compassion. There was no forced conversion, no coercion, only the quiet, steady influence of a faith that promised justice, equality, and dignity for all. Today, as we look back on this moment in history, we are reminded that great transformations often begin with a single event, a turning point that reshapes the course of nations and generations. And so, I leave you with this final reflection. How can we, too, be agents of positive change in our time? What legacies will we leave behind? And how can we ensure that our actions today contribute to a better tomorrow? Dear viewer, as we conclude this journey through the Battle of Nahawand, I invite you to take a moment for introspection. History is not merely a collection of dates and names. It is a mirror that reflects our present and guides our future. Ask yourself, are you facing challenges in your life that seem insurmountable? Do you feel overwhelmed by obstacles that appear too large to overcome? Remember the lesson of Nahawand, that faith, unity, and wise strategy can turn the tide in your favor. Seek knowledge, study the past, understand the struggles and triumphs of those who came before us. Apply these lessons to your own life, whether in personal growth, leadership, or community building. And above all, strengthen your relationship with Allah. For it was faith that guided the Muslim army to victory, and it is faith that will guide us through the trials of our time. If you found value in this video, please share it with others who may benefit. Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts or any lessons you've drawn from this story. Don't forget to subscribe for more content that inspires, educates, and uplifts. May Allah grant us the wisdom to learn from history, the courage to face our challenges, and the humility to serve humanity with integrity. Thank you for watching.